Hello, everybody. This is Debbie from Teacher Success Coach. I've tested this before we came on, you know. I'm not too sure what's going on here. Okay, fine. Right. Oh my goodness. There seems to be some challenges when I come on, although I tested before. I'm not too sure what's going on. Anyway, hello everybody. This is Debbie from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable, where I talk to female educators from around the world. We are discussing the transition back into the physical classroom, because as you guys know, we've been online and there's some countries that's still online, right? Or some of them are actually doing a hybrid, but in the UK and in some areas of America, it's online, it's back in the physical classroom. So welcome to my other guests. I am so thankful that you've actually accepted the offer to come online to share the transition, because we know there are many, right? Welcome. Introduce yourself, sir, and tell us where you come from and tell us what you do.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Sarah. I am the host of Teach with Mrs. T. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the blog site, teachwithmrst.com, which is how Debbie found me. Currently, I am an assistant head teacher for pastoral, looking at wellbeing across the whole school. That's a maternity cover for the year, so I've got 1 year to make as big an impact as possible. And I'm also simultaneously the head of technology, so I look after computer science, food technology, product design at present. Been teaching for 20 years. Currently, I'm in an independent school where I've been since September. Prior to that, I've done 20 years in rather challenging schools across the country, mainly a few different settings along the way.
Okay.
My subject is computer science, and that's my background.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So you teach across the board, right, from year 7 all the way up to year 13?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Unlike me, I only teach, I teach year 10s now, but year 10s, 11, 12, and 13.
Yeah.
But I prefer the 6th form. I would like to think they're less challenging, but anyway, they have their own challenges.
Their own challenges, indeed.
Okay, so what has it been like for you before the pandemic and the transition? Because we're looking at, the transition, where were you before, and then what it was like during the pandemic. And now I think we are across on the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, quite. When just the year prior to the pandemic, I just started a new post as a head of faculty for business studies and computer science, with the job of reinvigorating those subjects. And so I was very excited to be going into a new school, to be making changes, to be really getting students excited about computer science, because I am a fully fledged nerd and very proud of that fact. And I managed to raise the uptake at GCSE from 12 students to 45 in my first term of being there.
Wow.
So really reinvigorated it, and it was really going places, and it was so exciting. Everybody was talking about computer science. There was a real buzz about the place. We started to get new technology in. We upgraded all of the computers. The rooms were looking lovely. Bang, pandemic. Fortunately, we were already a Google school at that point, so using Google Classroom had become the norm, although we were just experimenting with it and testing it out. Then all of a sudden, everything's on Google Classroom, and we were live teaching straight away. There wasn't a wait for us. So unlike other schools, we went straight into online teaching. We were, in the weeks in the run up to the pandemic, each faculty area, each subject area led a day in the school and staffed the site for the key worker children. But all lessons followed the normal timetable and were online. So we taught our normal timetables just from our office, from our kitchen table, from our dining table, from wherever. And then we each, as leaders, took turns in supervising the key worker children. I had, as I was speaking to you before, Debbie, 3 newly refurbished computer suites, which meant that we could house a number of students in there at the safe legal distances with ventilation and air conditioning. So for me, I never really left the classroom. I was always in it. The challenge for me, I think, was when the regulations came back that everyone was back in the classroom. So I wasn't able to go and sit in the same house as my family because we're in different households and there'd be more than 6 of us. Yet I could be in a classroom with 30 children wearing a face mask and a visor. And for me, and my sister was an intensive care nurse, so she saw all of it. My husband was frontline NHS staff. So high risk situations all round, in that we had pretty much separate wings of our house, so that we reduced potential impact of being in contact with COVID and the virus itself. But the biggest impact I think we found was the disparity between the children that had access to the online learning and engaged in it, compared with the children who didn't have access or didn't engage with it, and then the massive gaps in their learning. And the year after the pandemic, where students had to sit exams, the students there were like, well, this isn't fair. How is this fair? I missed a year of my GCSE too, and yet I have to sit my exam. How is this okay? And I think then the year 11s that have just sat their exams as well were also impacted, and the knock-on effects of the gaps in their knowledge, that has been the biggest challenge. And getting the students to believe that they can do it, that we've given them enough, that we've filled them with as much knowledge as possible to be successful in their exams, which are now normal, no adjustments for these humongous gaps that our children have. And I think being able to manage that's almost social care and that emotional care of our children that are sat in front of us, as well as being a teacher and a manager and a crowd controller and all of those things, the different plates you have to spin. Our jobs have, I mean, teachers' jobs were always massive anyway. Don't get me started on that, Debbie, because we'll be here till next Saturday. Let's just block off the whole of June, because we'll be here the whole month. But our jobs have grown exponentially with the amount of things that are now on the list of things that teachers now have to do in order to ensure the safeguarding from a well-being point of view of our children, to make sure that they are okay. That has been, I think, that element of our jobs, that unseen, that intangible workload that we have, that I think has been the most mentally and physically draining element of going back to normality, as it were.
Thank you for that. But what I also find was, we went back, right, in the March. We went back in the March, and it was business as usual.
Mhm.
There was no thought of these young people have challenges because they're social being and they were not able to socialize, etc. So therefore there must be something happening. It was just business as usual, and I found it so strange because
nothing to see here, carry on. It's like the typical British mentality, isn't it? Like, nothing to see here, business as usual, carry on, nothing happened. Go
exactly. And it was so strange because a lot of, because my background is psychology, I take a different stand on that. Whereas some teachers had no idea. For me, I felt that I needed to find out where they are, check their emotional well-being, etc., etc. Because when we went back, one of the schools I went to, some of the children, especially year 13, because I was teaching year 13, some of them considered suicide because the whole thing was so traumatic for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no support for them. The teachers didn't even know what to do.
We had children in the school that I taught at where they lived in an extended family house. So there was children, parents, grandparents, and COVID took the lives of both grandparents and a parent. And this child then was expected just to, come into school, do your best, and how there's not enough. And again, if we start talking about access to social care, Debbie, we know block off the summer, because there aren't enough, there isn't enough support for the needs that now exist as a result of the pandemic, and that's only ever going to get smaller, I think, at the moment.
Yeah. It is so, there's so much. I think we better just leave that. Let me just come to this. Since you've gone back, right, what do you think the relationship between you and the students have been?
Well, like I was talking to you before, I mean, I was tech support for a lot of the students at the school that I worked at. And it's important to remember that I moved schools in September. So I spent this year building relationships with new students. And I think to some extent has been easier than trying to maintain, to maintain relationships with the children that I was teaching through the pandemic. But a lot of the children saw me as the person to help them with their technical needs, like whether that be a password or how to hand in work or how to get into a meeting on a different sort of device that wasn't standard or wasn't fancy, and how could they do this. So I think the relationship has been have been good in general terms, but I think that I've found that students have been a little bit more attached almost, and this is where your psychology background will come in. It's some kind of like attachment need that you are still there, you are the safe place, you are the regular face, and you're not going anywhere, you're not doing anything, what do I do next? And the neediness that the children seem to have, both from a academic point of view, and the amount of spoon feeding and the amount of guidance that they need, but also that reassurance that they're okay, you're okay, and it's okay to feel funny and feel sad and feel happy or not really be bothered about this. It's okay, but to get them to express their feelings when they've had to be so guarded about everything. When we first went back, there were a lot of children that were very, very, very cautious about germs, about sanitization and all that kind of thing. But for me, I think the relationships have been generally good. Like I said, I've just found them a little bit more needy.
It's interesting though, because that is something I did find as well as something you point out in terms of the reassurance. They constantly needed that reassurance that it's okay. Yes, you are able to do that. And I also feel that it was a lot on the teachers because there was no support for us. But yet we have to be supporting these children who needed our support because the fear of the pandemic was so great in those children. Although we also had fears, but we able to navigate our emotion, but a lot of them didn't know how or what to do. And yes, the neediness was great.
Is that almost that pervasive trauma, isn't it, that you as a teacher sort of absorb it?
Yes.
And then where do you go with it? What do you do with that? Where do I go when and for a lot of teachers, that's their line manager or a member of SLT or like me, the person responsible for wellbeing or somebody else within the school. And then then where do they go?
Yeah, exactly.
who's there for the deputy head? Who's there for the head when everyone else is uploading on them? And it just snowballs as it gets higher up. So yeah,
that's something I did, I must say I did find in terms of that. The school that you were in, what do you think that there was a student community, just before you left, right? Because you left in September, right? So that was after the pandemic. Do you think that a school community existed then? Were there a community then?
I think to a certain extent the children were. I mean, it was very difficult circumstances, and a lot of change was happening at the school. So the children felt unsettled with elements of the school itself, but banded together, like they were a combined force. They were there for each other. So they had a community, yes. Whether there was a whole school community, I don't think so. But again, that's circumstantial, not because of the pandemic.
Thank you. What has discipline been like after, when you came back from the pandemic? What I found when we came back, right? I found discipline was all over the place. It was a nightmare for me.
Yeah, I think I found that there was, children were either at one end of the spectrum. There was no in between. They either had no regard for any rules whatsoever because they'd been able to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and who was I to tell them what to do? And there were others that craved structure. Because there hadn't been any for so long, and they just needed that routine. I need to know where I am. I need to be out the house. I need to be doing this. And again, we have to remember that a lot of our children, in a lot of areas of the country, there are challenging circumstances going on at home, and actually sometimes school is a bit of a respite for them. And so being able to go and talk to somebody else and to go and have that social interaction, they were very happy to be in the building. And like I said, there were others that just didn't care for rules. What I did find was that the younger years, when we first came back, so the year 7s immediately after the pandemic, they were difficult because they'd been out of primary school for critical points of the year before the transition into secondary. Their behavioural challenges were quite significant, because again, the primary schools did their very best, did their level best to support the children learning, but not quite the same as a secondary school situation where you've got a teacher who's a specialist in a particular subject doing that online according to their timetable for X amount of minutes of a lesson. Can't really do that with 35, 6, 7-year-olds. It doesn't work. It just simply doesn't work. And I think the younger children, particularly those who were transitioning into secondary in the pandemic years, they were more challenging in terms of reintegrating them into a sort of a system of rules and things that we follow, and routines and processes and systems, and this is how we do things. That's
It is very true. Thank you for that. You said something earlier when we were talking, that you had never left the classroom, and the fact that you were supporting children later in the evening when they had access to the device, right? One of the things is, therefore, in that case, why didn't you guys just did the schooling in the evening instead? Because the reason why I say that, in America, some of the teachers say to me that they realized that the children were not getting up to come online in the morning. So therefore they started their lesson from 1 o'clock in the afternoon and they went on until 8. Or they start from 3 until 8. Was that something you guys had considered? So which means they were off in the morning.
I think there was a brief discussion about it, but the logistics, it was a very large school, and the logistics for the staff who also had families, it just became too messy. And I think it was easier for the school and for some sort of, again, some form of normality, is the children follow their timetable, and this is the timetable. The lessons were recorded so that if they weren't able to attend live, they could watch it later on in the day. So that's how we did it. It was our policy that when you were delivering a live lesson, you would record it and then post that to your classroom later on. So that's how we did it. But that would have been a decision that would have been way above my pay grade at the time. So yeah, not one for me.
Yeah, but you also meant that you didn't have a proper respite.
No, but that wasn't imposed upon me. That was just something. I was very restless. I didn't like being away from the children. I needed to teach them. That's what I do. I'm a teacher. It's not just what I do. It's who I am. And I was like, what do? I need to be there for the children. What if someone needs me? I need to be able to do this. I need to just checking my emails, just making sure. And I had to have a strong word in myself to take a break because I was getting it. Well, nobody asked me to do it. It kind of happened by accident that I was helping people with passwords because I had the admin rights, and people were going, other colleagues were saying, Sarah, do you know how to do this? I'm like, I do, but it's quicker if you just let me do it rather than me explain it to you, because by the time I've explained it to you, I could have just done it. And then I inadvertently became tech support to support the in-house IT support guys, because from the Google Classroom point of view, that wasn't their domain. They were networks and systems. That for me became that was almost like my OCD tendencies and my need to make sure everything's checked off and done and finished. I never quite felt like my day was finished because there was always someone else that needed help. And so I had to take a step back because I realized I was approaching burnout or potential burnout by doing that. So yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness. And could you imagine that, it's like it's a spin around, you're constantly at it.
And I think a lot of teachers push themselves to that burnout or very close to the edge of burnout level because they feel it's this self-imposed obligation almost to keep working. And it took a long time. As I said, I've been teaching for 20 years now. I've only just really learnt to leave work at work. When I close my laptop at the end of the school day, that's me done.
That is something I constantly say to teachers, because I was in the point where I was constantly at it until I'm thinking, hold on, I need some boundaries here, because or else there is no boundary between home life and school life. Because I
also have a 6-year-old, so when I get home, I am mum. So I need time for my daughter. He's very much loving school, but wants to do her homework and needs to read her book to get her reading ladder signed and all of these sorts of things. And there's bags to be packed for the various clubs and classes that she does, and all of this sort of thing. And I want to be there for her. I didn't want to be there. It was when it was. I know. Sorry, it's a bit an emotional subject, but it was when. One weekend she said, can you play with me today, mummy, or have you got to work again? And that's when it hit me that I needed to draw a line and make time, not make time, but give my time to my child and not work and wait. There's nothing that, if I do it today on a Saturday, it's nothing that can't wait till Monday morning. Nothing is so urgent that my daughter has to say, can you play with me today, mummy, or have you got to work? And that was the bit that got me realize that maybe I should slow down a bit.
It's interesting though, is when the children actually say those things to us, it reminds us that, hold on, your first priority is that of a mother, not the children in the school. There's sometimes we need those, painful it is, we need those reminders from our own children. Thank you for that. What does self-care do you think has been supported in the school?
Well, as the person who's in charge of well-being for staff and students, I'd like to think that it's well supported in my school. But I know that there's work to be done. It's not perfect, and we are working with staff to really actively listen and hear what they've got to say, to then make effective changes that will really support them. I think in general, and I'm making a sweeping generalization here, and this isn't all schools and it's not all situations, and I know that. But I think there's a risk sometimes that well-being becomes tokenistic. Well-being is more than cakes on a Friday. Well-being is more than a CPD that's given up to well-being activities, you know, like let's go knit or do yoga. It's not about that. The real thing to support mental well-being and the health of your staff is managing workload and expectations, but also giving signposts to where teachers can find support for themselves when they don't know what burnout looks like, they don't know what stress looks like or anxiety, they just know that they're not quite right and they don't know what it is. So a help in recognizing what certain things are, what the symptoms are, and where to get help, I think, is what is really needed. So that's, I don't know, we've kind of gone off a tangent there on
that's fine. That's fine.
I think schools are trying to support well-being. Genuinely, I do. I think there's lots of work that is currently being done, and I think when the person who finds out how to get it right finds out how to get it right, they will be making a lot of money from that. But because it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, what works in one school is not going to work elsewhere. So yeah, I think for my own mental health and well-being and my self-care is very much supported by the school that I'm currently in. I feel that way, but again, I know that there's probably colleagues within the school that I work and within education that don't feel that, because it's very, very personal and very subjective. And I think, again, when you, and I know I just made a generalization that there's a risk that it becomes tokenistic in schools. What works for one person doesn't work for somebody else. So someone might really benefit from a fortnightly yoga session. That might really do them the world of good. For me, that's my, why am I doing that? I don't want to do that. That's not going to help my mental well-being. What would help my mental well-being is someone marking that set of year 9 tests that I've got to do over there, or me having the time to sit quietly with some really loud music, sit in a room by myself with some really loud music on and just smash out a load of marking so that I know that it's done. For other people, it's sitting and having a cup of tea and that time during the day to just connect with colleagues, because social interactions have been so restricted for so long that actually there's still gaps in those working relationships, because we were fragmented from each other for so long. And even when we're back in the building, we're all in little bubbles. You couldn't all talk to each other. And so there became almost, cliques is a very strong word, but small groups, small pockets of people that became friends and colleagues and colleagues and friends and all of that kind of thing, but not collegiately as a whole staff body. And I think that fragmentation is what schools need to work on, rebuilding that sort of team mentality within schools when we've been almost segregated for so long.
It is true, thank you. Because when I look at self-care and well-being as well, I just think it seems to be a token, because I think that should be, because I've been in a lot of schools and I feel that it should be something that is continuous. And it should be something that is being checked up on a daily basis, not once a week, because not once a week, every day you need to check in to see how the staff is doing. And I think there is where I feel that schools have not quite got it, because it's like, I've been in school where on the Friday is cakes and whatever. I've been in schools where on the Monday it's the PD, right? And all this is just once a week. Well, what's happened to the rest of the week? The rest, they're 5 days, and it's only once a week that seems to be taken on board. Oh yes, check on staff well-being and self-care. No, I think that I personally feel that that's something need to be continuous every day.
Absolutely. And it also needs to be that longer term planning. So where you've got reports due, for example, you don't then also have parents' evening in that same week, or
thank you,
where you've got a deadline to meet for mock exams for marking. That's not in the same week as a whole staff meeting, or so you look at the calendar so that staff aren't overwhelmed or overburdened with everything all at once. And I think that's something that I think my current school does quite well, actually, that the deadlines and the workload there is spaced out, so you have the time, if you wish, to do it bit by bit. My own preference is to go, right, I'm in the zone now, I'm just going to write my reports and do it a class at a time. But for others who've got larger groups than I do, or teach the whole school, they need to do it in smaller chunks because they've got more children to teach than I do. An option subject, I don't teach all the children all the time, whereas where you've got core subjects, you do teach all the children all the time. I'm fortunate to be in a small school, but for those in large state secondary schools, if you teach science and you teach from year 7 to year 13, then you've got a good 1,000 children that you've got to write reports for. And that needs to be spread out. You can't do that all in one go. I also believe that if there's a parents' evening in a week, you shouldn't then also have a meeting that week. There's only one late evening in your directed time. That's my personal belief. But I think lots of schools try and do that. There are others where they expect you to be 9 till 5 every day.
Yes, it is so very true, because I've been in school where it is expected that I have to be there from 8:30 until 4:30. And I'm saying, and then when there is, because in sixth form you have the late night and then you have 2 late nights. I'm saying, hold on, why am I having 2 late nights on top of this? It is very true. And you have some of the schools that are actually very conscious of well-being, and they say, okay, we don't want you to take anything else out of the school, so therefore you need to find a way to do your marking in the school. So you have some of them that are very conscious, but they're still not checking in on the daily check-in to see how you're doing, but it's conscious of, okay, you finish at 3:30 or 3:15. By 3:30, the latest 4 o'clock, we want you out of the building. Which is fantastic, but those are very few schools.
They are. And also I think sometimes that, Debbie, can be counterproductive, because for me, so I organize my week around childcare needs, so and wraparound care, and when obviously my husband also works till 6 o'clock every day, and so we have to balance it. There's a day of the week where he doesn't work during the week, and so therefore that's my late night. So that's Wednesday, my midweek point, where I can stay as late as I need to at work, because he does the school run. My daughter then goes to Scouts, and then we eat later on in the evening. So I've got until sort of 7 p.m. if I want to get all my work done, and then be home to hear all about the day and how excited everything is. But so if someone came to me and told me I had to be out by 4, that would stress me out, because no, I need to be here because I need to do this here now, so that I can relax at home. It's like the old adage, beware the pulsating briefcase. It's a little bit like the Jumanji drums. If you take a bag of work home with you because you think you've got to do it, but actually when you get home you don't want to do that work anymore because you want to spend time with your family, or you're just mentally and physically exhausted, but in the back of your mind you can't relax because all you can hear are those Jumanji drums beating, and it's your work bag, a bag of marking over there, looking at, almost like it's looking at you, staring into your soul when you're trying to relax, because it's there, and you're like, just leave it at work, and then it's not looking at you, and the drums aren't beating, and you can actually, it can wait till the morning. That's the biggest mindset shift for my self-care and mental well-being that I've had to do. For a number of different reasons, some of which we discussed earlier, but it can wait. It can wait till the morning. That's it. End of discussion. Really, for me.
I totally agree with that, because there are times, as you say, you constantly take the bag of marking with you. Goes home on Monday, you go home, you don't do it. Go home on Tuesday, it goes home on Wednesday. By Thursday, say, you know what? Hell, it stays in the classroom. It stays in the office. I'm not taking that with me, and I'm going to mark it when I get in there. Right.
I've just come back from a holiday in Wales. I accidentally took a packet of tests with me. It was in my backpack that I took on holiday with me. So I just threw loads of things in my backpack. I hadn't checked it properly. And I was unpacking it at the holiday. And I was like, what is this? Year 9 exams. I'm not marking them. I just put them in the side underneath something. I went, right, I'll leave them until I put them in the car in a safe spot. I'm like, well, what are they doing here? I'm not marking them. I'm on holiday. I'm leaving them. But it's really easily done. The things that you do automatically is like, right, I've got my backpack. I'm going away, but there might be time. I'll do this and I'll just be able to do that. It's like, no, relax. You need your downtime. You need it. But for some people, again, it's all very well and good saying everyone needs to switch off, everyone needs to relax. But for some people, the idea of not checking their planner on a Sunday afternoon or not making sure they've got everything for the week, you know, either on a Saturday morning or whenever they choose to do it, telling them they're not allowed to do that is actually more stressful for them and is counterproductive to their mental well-being, because they need to know that it's checked off, that they've got everything and they know what they need to do that week. Make a plan, make a list. I'm one of those, I'm a planner. So I will get my planner out tomorrow. I've already had a quick look at it today just to make sure I knew what I was doing for the week, because I felt I needed to. And I was done. Once I'd done, my brain was satisfied. Like, no, it's all okay, all sorted. And I could go on about my day and relax. So tomorrow afternoon, I'll take 5-10 minutes, maybe half an hour, just to go through, like, what am I doing this week? Have I got everything I need? And if I haven't, what do I need to do on Monday morning? And how much earlier do I need to go in? Because I've reached the dizzy heights of SLT and know that, and everyone with a face will know, God loves a planner. So, you know, make a plan and you just know that someone's going to come in and effectively just go, oh, I see you've got loads of lovely things on your desk there, Sarah. Just swipe it all off and then you're going to have to go and sort something else out. So I had to get in, do all of my bits and pieces, and then I'm ready for whoever needs me at the start of the school day. And that's what I'll do. But I know that that's going to be headphones in, door shut, do not disturb for that first half an hour, 45 minutes of the day while I'm getting everything ready, so that then when someone else needs me to do the job that I'm now doing, I'm there for it. So.
Wow. The thing is, I don't do my planning. I leave my planner at work. You know, I've got two things. I've got my planner at work because it's quite thick. And then I have another exercise book that I plan in. So I say, but Debbie, this is nonsense. So you have two planners. Although you leave the heavy one at work, you take the other one at home. So which means you still check in to see what you have, you know, to do for the rest of the week. But
is your thick one at work the one that's pretty with colours in it and stickers and nice lines and written out in? It is, isn't it? Yeah. Different coloured highlighter for different classes, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And then you have the
you've got your scribble one, because you can't have scribbles in your nice neat planner. Oh, I know, I get it. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then you have all the post-it notes sticking out at the end. Yes, this is the different color post-it. You know it well. You know it well. That's exactly it. That's exactly it, you know. So another thing is, thank you for that. This, in terms of the students' mindset, where do you think in terms of, you know, they're back in the physical classroom, and what do you think the mindset have been like in terms of preparing and ready to take on board the lessons?
I'd love to say they all had a growth mindset, Debbie, I really would, but I think a lot of them need reminding of the word yet. Or they're so sort of almost afraid of failure that they go, what's the point in trying? And we take it a step back. The pandemic, as we were doing so well with student mindset as a educating community, we're moving forward. It's been forefront for a long time now, and learning from mistakes and knowing that mistakes are okay, and this is how we learn, and how do we fix them, and then looking at actually going in and unpicking where the mistake was, why it was wrong, how we make it right next time, how do we do it better next time. That big chunk of the work that we do, again, someone's just swiped that off the desk and gone, no thanks, and now we've got to do it all again for some of our students and start from the beginning. I found, particularly with year 11, a very anxious mindset about exams, because they've missed things and they want to make sure they've got everything, and although they've had their GCSE time a little disrupted, you know, year 10 was quite an upheaval situation for them because elements of the pandemic were still happening. I think they've had a rough deal. I think there should have been adjustments for their exams personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, it is so true. And I think the group we all are talking about is year 10 and year 11. That's what in all schools, that's what that's what the teachers are talking about, because the year 11 feel that they have not had a proper opportunity when it comes to the exams.
Our year 13s have just sat A-levels and they haven't sat a formal exam before.
Exactly.
It's their first ever exam. And yet we're expecting them to sit a standard A-level with no adjustment whatsoever. And how is that okay? How is that fair? It just isn't. And okay, they might adjust grade boundaries and they might make adjustments with mark schemes and things, but it's not okay. And these poor children are stressed and panicked because they just don't know what to do because they've not done it before. And mock exams are all well and good, but they're not the real thing where you have to wait for 6 weeks for a result. It's just not the same. And so I think sixth form quite often get forgotten. And I mean, I've done it a lot in our chat this evening. We talk about the younger children and the lower year groups, but year 13s, this is their first ever set of exams. Ever. Because they didn't do their GCSE. That was time.
Exactly. Yep. And you know what
teacher assessed grades.
Exactly. Oh, that's another challenge in itself. And you know what I really find out is, like, the minute my students have done the exam paper, it doesn't matter what class I'm teaching, they're coming to find me. Because I suppose because they have not done any exam. It's like I was teaching a year 10 and they just burst into the classroom. And I'm saying to them, I'm teaching a class. No, miss, we've just had the exam, and it's like all unwinding. And I had to say to my year 10, sorry guys, I just need to have a conversation with this group, because it was the anxiety, it was the uncertainty, it was all of that coupled in one. And it's like they have not done the exam before, so they want to talk.
Yep, they need to do that. They need to decompress it and let it all out, don't they?
Yeah, and they didn't even care what the fact that I had a year 10 group, because as far as they're concerned, year 10 could wait. They're coming to talk to me was much more urgent. And it's like, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And then I had to think, okay, that was the first exam. So therefore I have to think in a way, okay, when they finish, I need to, it's like I check when the exam starts, when they finish. So therefore I have to make myself available so that when they come out of the exam, I know they're going to be coming and find me.
Yeah.
And it's quite tiring, because it's like the week we finish at half term, my colleagues said to me, oh, have you seen some of the students? Because they were looking for you. I say, yes, I did find them on the corridor. It's like things like that, as you rightly say. Had they done exam before, that would not be such an issue for them.
Yep.
Okay, another thing is, as a teacher, what are the things that stress you out most?
It's a very good question. One I'll answer delicately. Things that stress me out the most. The thing that stresses me out the most is people saying, "Oh, don't you get lovely holidays?" That's the thing that stresses me out the most, I think. Or that I think at the moment, out of the political sphere, I've got lots of political things that stress me out. That, the scapegoating of teachers, that the lazy teachers, that we got paid for doing nothing, we didn't work through the pandemic, all of this kind of stuff. When who was teaching your children, of your key workers? It was us. We were the ones going in with 30 children in a room, risking lives. The teacher at the next school to the one that I taught at died of COVID that he caught from a child. That this, but we're all lazy. So that all of that stresses me out. But I think for me, it's I get, it's more frustration really with children not believing that they can do it, or just having that to constantly go, it's okay, no, you can do this, it's good. And And then I think my children will tell you it's untucked shirts. That's what stresses me out the most. When they see me coming around the corner, you see all this frantic quick tucking in of a shirt. She's coming, Mrs. Trigger's coming, tuck your shirt in. Because chairs left out from underneath the desk, the shirts untucked, and people not following rules is the thing that stresses me out. And my children mock me for it relentlessly, that I'm obsessed, they will say, with rules. And I'm like, yes, I am. Rules are good. It means we all know what we're doing. And so, yeah, that's what I think, aside from the usual things that stress all teachers out, I suppose. But for me, it's those things.
Thank you. It's interesting. For me, it's like the curriculum, not having enough time to teach this curriculum.
I'm in, as I said before, I've moved to a private school, and I feel I do have enough time because I have got smaller class sizes. I'm able to deliver more and have those meaningful discussions. When you've got a class of where your maximum class size is at 15, 20 at Key Stage 3, and then you're looking at 10 to 15 at Key Stage 4, you have that time to give those children that individual feedback and have those real meaningful conversations. And I think when you've got 30, it's very, very difficult to never leave somebody out of a conversation in a lesson. And if you've only got 60 minutes of a lesson where you've got to deliver content, get retrieval practice in, find something, a hook point to really underpins the knowledge and the learning of that lesson, assess that in some form, and then have meaningful conversations with 30 children. The time constraints there, I think, really impact on that. So there's, other things frustrate me, Debbie, things like the fact that computer science isn't compulsory, and it should be, and those sorts of things. But the fact that there isn't enough, some things aren't covered enough, and some things aren't given the proper time, the squeezing of the arts in some sectors, and how children have to make choices between subject A or subject B. Why can't we just do a mix of everything, that sort of thing? But then that impacts on jobs available and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I see that. For me, I think the subject that in most schools seems to leave out is music, art, all the subjects that supports the young people's well-being. Those are the subjects that are chopped. And it's quite sad because those are the subjects that are needed to have this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, those are those are another thing that stressed me out as well. Right. How did you feel when you went back to the classroom?
Well, when I went back to full teaching, I was a little bit nervous. I was very conscious that I had a young child at home. I didn't want them to get COVID, and I've got a husband who works within the NHS front line. I didn't want them to get COVID. I didn't want to get COVID. I did get COVID, but I'd been vaccinated, and so I literally felt as fit as a fiddle. I had no impact whatsoever, no symptoms whatsoever, and it was only a routine swabbing after my husband had had it and my daughter had had it. So I was quite lucky, but trying to make sure that I found really challenging, and the frustration of the rules and why it was okay for me to be in this room with this many children with windows open and door open, but I couldn't go and visit and have a meal with my parents and my sister and brother-in-law, because then we're more than 6 people from different, we're from 3 different households, not 2. I just found it bizarre. And I think I was very, very tired, physically, mentally, because of the shift in, we still had some children who were vulnerable children or had vulnerable parents, and so weren't coming in. And so you're like simulcasting your lessons on Google Classroom and physically in a room, making sure everyone's got everything. I think just the mental load of that, the plate spinning of that was really, really challenging.
Yeah, I found it very tiring. because at one time when I'm teaching on Google Classroom, and I was teaching in the classroom, and then the student have to remind me, Miss, you know, XYZ is online, and I have to turn myself around to make sure I connect with them, because it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things I really had, you know. Right, 2 more questions. The next one is, do you think that being a teacher in the 21st century is more challenging than ever before?
Well, I've only ever taught in the 21st century, so I can't comment on other centuries. However, I think the amount, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about before we came on live, Debbie, was that the amount of facets to a teacher's job now has grown exponentially. So we're no longer just a teacher. Our job is no longer just to impart knowledge and inspire children about our subject. We are also now a counsellor. We're a social worker. We're safeguarding officers, which we should be, and that's right and proper. But we are caregivers. We are pseudo parents for some children. We are mental and emotional support for children and sometimes their parents. We're involved in multi-agency support hubs. We are having discussions with various different organisations and agencies, as well as then the marking, the assessing, the grading, the reporting, the discipline, the following up, the pastoral care, and the load of pastoral care that we now have as teachers has grown exponentially. And so that means now that teachers I don't think have physically enough time to do, particularly in the state sector. I mean, I'm fortunate, as I said, I'm in a small independent school at the moment, and so I have fewer children that I'm a tutor for, but there's still 16 children whose parents I need to contact on a regular basis, and people will be out there going, 16? That's easy life. Yes, but then if each child takes 5 minutes for a phone call on average, you know, that's an hour and a half that you need to spend calling home. Now, if you've got 30 children in your tutor group, that's 3 hours you need to make a 5-minute phone call for each child, assuming that each phone call is only going to take 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And so the amount of pastoral care and the time needed for that is just not accounted for in teachers' workload and timetables. It's just not, and it needs to be.
Yep. And then you have people saying, "Oh, you guys are so lucky; you have so much holidays." Really?
Yeah.
You know,
So
much holiday. Exactly. What's the
well,
most?
I can't really talk. I've literally just come back from a holiday, but I had a well-deserved week off. The Easter holiday I spent preparing for moving up to SLT as I took on the maternity cover role and getting all my ducks in a line for that, making sure that I was ready, prepared, got all the handover notes, going to meetings and having discussions within the Easter holidays so that I was ready for taking out should the maternity leave start early, which sometimes they can. I was ready to roll. So yeah, I mean, and also we do trips in our half terms, you know, that's not easy. People go, oh, you get to go here, you get to go there. Yeah, but I'm also in charge of this many children. It's not like I'm going on a holiday. You know?
Exactly. I find those are the most tiring thing, because you
don't sleep, do you?
Of course not. Because you're all over, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, you have to be checking constantly. So when you think in terms of a holiday, what holiday? You're babysitting. There's no holiday. There's constant babysitting because you're constantly checking. That's the thing about it. What are the most rewarding things of being a teacher?
Seeing children love my subject. When you get, I liken it to Gru in the Minions films, when he says light bulb, and you know, he gets a light bulb flash above his head. When something finally clicks and a child understands something and they are so proud of themselves, that for me is the most rewarding thing. Or when a child so desperately wants to share something they've achieved with you because they want you to know, they want to tell you are the most important person to know that information at that time. That for me is one of the best things.
Yep. they, you know, especially when you've been trying to teach them so long and they couldn't get it, and they finally get it, you're thinking, whoa, that's the aha moment. Yep. Thank you. Do you think teaching should be teacher-led or student-centered, or student-led, student-centered?
I need time to think about that question. I think we should always be centered on the children. Everything we do is about the children. But we are the experts. We're the ones who've studied degrees. We're the ones who have degrees in a subject and postgraduate qualifications in education and know how to educate. So I think this should definitely be the content, the delivery, the structure should be thought of from the teacher, but with the student in mind. There's a lot to be said for student-led learning, particularly with computing. I can go, right, here's a problem, solve it, and then tell me how you did it. Easy for me, because I can do that, as my subject lends itself to that, particularly when programming is involved, or you've got to make some form of machinery or a robot that there's no instructions, you've got to work it out, and all that sort of logic, the abstraction and the decomposition of problems. My subject really lends itself to it. But I also teach business studies. It's not as easy to go, you tell me about marketing strategies. If they've got no knowledge of it, you can't really just expect them to know it. So you can sort of guide discussions and allow them to share their experiences and bring their own knowledge in, but you've really got to be leading, not leading, but directing where the learning should be going, and bringing the students along with you for the ride. I nearly said the J word then, that is really cringy, and I nearly said the journey, but it's about bringing the students along with you in that lesson to make sure no one's left behind, and they're all getting something out of it. And some will have climbed a tree on the journey, you know, they'll have gone up a tree and looked out and seen loads of great things. Other people will have just managed to scuffle along and make it to the end. But that's where your differentiation, your adaptive teaching comes in, so that every person, you've got that equity in your lesson to make sure everyone can access what it is you want them to access. But you can only do that if you're thinking about your students when you're planning and then delivering your lesson. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It's like, as you were talking, I was just visualizing the whole thing. You know, you do have some of them that would be coming along, and you have some of them that would stumble and they stop on the way. And, you know, as you rightly said, there's where your differentiation comes in, because you realize that they are lost, but they're not telling you that they are lost. Yeah. Thank you. And finally, what 3 tips would you give to teachers regarding them dealing with their mental health and well-being to reduce anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout?
What I'm going to do is, once I finish talking, I'm going to post a link to a blog article that I wrote about this very topic.
Brilliant.
Because I could talk about this for a long time. But my three top tips would be leaving work at work. Now, if you can't do that every day, for some people, it takes a long time to shift their behavior and shift their mindset that, you know, they need to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to take it home. Okay, fine. We'll choose one day. Doesn't have to be a Friday for the weekend, but leave one day a week. Close your laptop, shut your classroom door, shut your office door, leave everything at work and go home. What's the worst that can happen? You are unwell in the morning and you have to call in, you haven't got your planner with you. Well, I'm sure you know your timetable, you know what you would have taught, because if you're the sort of person that brings your work home all the time, you'll be a meticulous planner, you'll know exactly what you're doing, you'll know where all your handouts and everything is already. You just direct someone to go and pick them up. You need to start. You can't do it every day to begin with, and you haven't got to the stage and the mindset like you and I, Debbie, where no, my laptop's staying at home, staying at work. Pick a day where that is the day that you don't take work home, and then make it 2 days and do it slowly. My second one is sort of 2 tips that are in my article together, and that's planning your time and routines. We always talk about how routines are important for children. Well, they're as equally important for an adult. And it sounds patronizing, I appreciate that, but Have a regular bedtime, have a regular get up time, have a routine for your wind down, because teachers overthink pretty much everything. So you need to ditch the screens, good an hour before bed. You need to be reading a book, or you need to be doing something that sort of starts the wind down process an hour before you want to go to sleep, because otherwise you'll be lying there thinking about all the things you should have been doing and all the things you've got to do tomorrow because you've not done them today, because you haven't given yourself that decompression time. Also, you need to make time for lunch. You need to eat during the day.
Yes.
In previous environments, I've just like powered through. I've powered through break, and I've powered through lunch, and I've just kept going, and I've eaten my lunch at 3:30 in the afternoon and wondering why I'm feeling so awful all the time. You need to sit down and eat, not at your, ideally not at your desk, but somewhere away from your desk, so that you've got that separation, you have that space at work. If you have the time and you have the opportunity, a walk, even if it's only for 10 minutes, out of the gates, around the block and back in again, just to reset your brain and get that fresh air, and plan what you're going to do when. In your PPA time, the glorious thing, and then the frees that aren't protected, a loose plan. Where you've got protected free time, plan what you're going to do. That is when I've taken in my year 7 homework on that morning. I'm going to, in that PPA that I have on the same day, that's when I'm going to mark their work. Then I don't have to do it after school. Or that's the time I'm going to get my photocopying done. Or that's the time I'm going to ring these parents, and plan out what you're going to do in each of your PPAs, so that you know when what your workload is, when you're going to do it, and all of that sort of thing. And learning how to say no. If you can't say no, say not yet. Well, I can do that, but I can't do it just yet because I've got these projects to do. But how does next week sound? Is that okay? Does that deadline work? And all of those sorts of things.
Yes, thank you. You know, the learning to say no, that's something I'm constantly saying to teachers. You need to say no, because when you say yes, guess what happened? You've actually leave yourself exposed, because you are stretching yourself.
Yep. It doesn't help.
Of course not, because then you're too tired to even do it effectively. So that's something in terms of, this is a word teachers cannot say, the no. You know, because there seems to be a fear attached to that.
Yeah, and then with the going back to the planning your time, there needs to be some form of protected time for you as a person, not the teacher, not Mrs. Tricky, not Ms. Eno, not whoever, not Mr. Smith, but just you. And that, whether that be a Saturday morning, and that's when you go for a run, if that's your thing, it's not mine. No disrespect to anybody who likes a run. I would love to be able to run. My joints do not allow it. Or if that's an hour on a Sunday morning to read the paper, if people still do that, or to read a book, or to sit and do your knitting or some craft, or whatever it is that helps you relax, just protected you time. And then that if you're lucky enough or fortunate enough to have a family around you, then it's protected family time, and that's no devices, no laptops, no nothing at the dinner table, for example, and have those conversations with your family, or whether it's a board game, or you know, going to the park with your younger child, or whatever it is, all of those sorts of things.
Thank you. I saw, you know, that is so very true. It's interesting because when you talk about the lunchtime, when it comes to my lunchtime, I'm very protected. I don't care what it is, I am not doing marking, photocopying, I don't care. This is my lunchtime, and that is my sacred time. And I'm very protective of my lunchtime, because I remember when I wasn't working in school, I think it was last year, and at lunchtime I had to cover a class after lunch, and they said to me, oh, but you need to go and copy at lunchtime. No, I'm not doing it. This is my sacred time. My lunchtime is very sacred to me. Yeah. So I don't mess around with my lunchtime. You're not hearing me, are you?
No, I am hearing you. Yes,
it's like an after, isn't it? It's an after thing. Yeah. So lunchtime for me is very sacred, and that's something, whatever school I go to, you know, I make it known. This school is very different because we cannot have lunch upstairs. We have to go downstairs to have lunch. It doesn't matter if you do it, let's say at 20 minutes, but you have to go downstairs to have lunch, you know. So that is a time that everybody have to have the lunch, and that's quite good because it means that you are having that time out, you know. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want, listeners?
No, I don't think. I think I've covered everything and more probably that I wanted to say. I've put a link to the article, as I said, that I wrote about preventing burnout and recognizing it. Just on the video, I posted a comment for those people who were interested. And I think teachers often care about everybody else first and put themselves at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
And it's a habit that we all get into somehow. I don't know quite how we do it. But it's really important that you are a human first. Mm-hmm. You are then a wife, a mother, a person next. Mm-hmm. Then you're a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I, as I said before, it used to be that it's not what I do, it's what I am. I am a teacher, it's what I need to be. And then the shift in mindset, I don't want to scare any younger colleagues, but it took me 20 years. It can take a long time to shift your mindset, but it's important to do. It's important that you do. That you're no good to anybody burnt out or broken mentally, physically, emotionally. You're no good to anybody like that, and you must come first.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In order for you to help someone, you need to love yourself and take care of yourself. If you are not able to do that, you are not able to help and protect and love anyone else. It comes from you. You need to have enough to give. And I think as teachers, we keep on forgetting that. It's like we're constantly at it, especially being a teacher and a parent. It's a really strange combination because you're constantly at it. And then when you look at yourself, you're thinking, hold on, I haven't had to sit down all day. I need to have a rest now. You know, and it's important. We need to actually take those on board. So thank you so very much. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic session. I really do appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
The link for the two articles I'm going to share because I've got teachers group. So yeah, so we could actually share that. So I could share it in there. Thank you very much, my Facebook community. Thank you to everybody. Good morning, night, evening, where you are. Have a fantastic evening, night, where you say, when I'll be looking at, we'll be discussing her empowerment and transformation journey, why she became empowered and what triggered her to transform her life. So we'll be doing that next Wednesday, and next Friday will be female educators. Next Friday will be female educators roundtable, but looking at homeschooling. And on Saturday, we'll be back again with another teacher from across the world. Thank you, guys. Take care, stay blessed. And